Hello, I'm Aaron, a birding naturalist. Welcome to my channel. Do you have a hummingbird feeder? Do you ever have other creatures coming and taking the hummingbird food out of your hummingbird feeders that you would like to stop? I have some thoughts. When you put hummingbird food in a hummingbird feeder, you're putting sugar water out there, right? Like that's what hummingbird food is. It's delicious. It's amazing. It's packed with carbohydrates. It is a very resource valuable food. And not just for hummingbirds. Lots of things. And sometimes those other things will stop the hummingbirds from enjoying the hummingbird food that you're putting out for them. So, for example, sometimes wasps, like yellow jackets, will find a hummingbird feeder and will start taking the hummingbird food out and will actually drive away hummingbirds. Sometimes ants will find a hummingbird feeder and will so swarm the hummingbird feeder that hummingbirds won't want to come in because they're going to get ants all over their face. So these are problems. These are issues that we have to face when we put out a hummingbird feeder in the hopes of luring hummingbirds into our yard. There are quite a few tips and tricks to encourage the hummingbirds, give them the resources that they need, while preventing or at least discouraging those other critters from coming in and mucking about and getting in the hummingbird's way. One great example is actually just when you built into a hummingbird feeder sometimes, and sometimes not, I'll get to that in a second, but it's a moat. So the hummingbird food goes down here, right? It goes in there. But between the hanger and the food, there's a trench or a moat that you can fill with water. And that prevents ants from being able to bridge the gap from wherever this thing is hanging to the food. Excellent. Some hummingbird feeders like this one actually have the moat built in. But like I said, there's other ways that you can deal with this if there isn't an actual built-in moat. There are actual little saucers, basically, that you can buy that attach on maybe a bit of chain from the hummingbird feeder to the saucer and then to whatever you're hanging it from. And so you can fill that saucer with water and it functions in exactly the same way. It forms this water barrier that ants coming down the chain hit, find, can't cross, and therefore give up. Another thing that you can do to prevent things like wasps from getting into your hummingbird feeder is to put enough food in the bottom, but not let the level of the food get too high. Hummingbirds have longer tongues than wasps do. And so, if you figure out the distance right, a wasp coming to the surface, sticking its tongue in, will not be able to reach the fluid, but a hummingbird who comes, sticks its bill and tongue in, will. So keeping a low amount of food in your hummingbird feeder is a good trick to discourage wasps. Another thing that will help make sure that the hummingbirds are finding your feeder and not the wasps is to place your hummingbird feeder somewhere sort of farther away from other vegetation and especially other flowers in your yard. If you have a beautiful flower bed, that's great. Keep it over here and put the feeder over there. Hummingbirds are pretty good at exploring their environment. They wander about quite a bit and they're very likely they will find that hummingbird feeder. The wasps won't so much. They aren't quite as good at exploring, and once they found their wonderful food resource, they tend to sort of stick around that food resource. And so they are less likely to fly over and find your hummingbird food if you put it a decent ways away. Two other sort of additive, chemically compound tricks are you can actually put Vaseline on the chain or the stem of your hummingbird feeder. And again, that's something you can add to stop insects from climbing down the stem and getting to the food. That Vaseline, as long as you put a nice thick layer on the chain or the stem of the feeder, will stop insects from climbing down. Another thing, and this is a little bit more anecdotal, but it seems to work. Almond extract, for whatever reason, when placed around the openings, seems to deter a lot of insects. For whatever reason, almond extract is unpleasant to a lot of insects. And so if you put it around the edges of the feeder, where the bird or insect could stick its tongue in, that seems to make it unpleasant enough that insects will sort of avoid it. Whereas it doesn't seem to bother the birds at all. They don't seem to care. And it doesn't hurt them. So it's another thing to try. If you have lots of insects like wasps, bees, really anything else, coming to your feeder, you don't want them to come to your feeder, you can put a little almond extract right around the openings and see if maybe that drives them away. One thing, whenever I'm talking about hummingbird food, hummingbird feeding, I always want to remind everyone is when you are making your hummingbird food, don't put any dyes in it. Sugar, water, that's it. I made a video about hummingbird food previously on my channel. I will link it in the description below. I say it there, I'm saying it here, no dyes. If you go to the hardware store, if you go to bird feed stores, pet stores, you'll often find for sale hummingbird food mix with dyes in it. And sometimes they're powders that you can dissolve. Sometimes they're like a concentrated liquid that you mix with water and dilute down. Either way, no dyes. Dyes are not good for birds. Sugar, water, that's all you need. Keep it simple. So let me know in the comments if you try any of these tricks, if you have any additional tricks for keeping pests and other sort of competitors away from your hummingbird feeders so that the hummingbirds themselves can maximize those visits and get all that food. And, share pictures, share anything you like about how to take care of your hummingbird feeders and take care of your hummingbirds. I hope this was useful. Hope you learned some tips and tricks. Thank you very much for the view, and until next time, enjoy the natural world.